The mass exodus of large, expensive cities and the financial strains that millions upon millions of Americans are experiencing right now with everything going on. Also, building the additional case for stimulus and further financial assistance through the end of 2020 and going into 2021. That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I have some very interesting information on the migration patterns of Americans in 2020 compared to other years, and the evidence that we have of massive financial strains that Americans are experiencing. But let's get right into it and talk about everything that I'm going to discuss in this video. But as always, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. Thanks so much for checking me out, and please be sure you are subscribed by hitting the button down below. If you're returning, welcome back. Great to see you again, and thanks so much for checking me out as always. I always like to say I like to look out for people in the groups Social Security recipients, retirement, disability, and survivors, SSI, VA, RRB, low income, no income, the underserved, and the underrepresented. But in this video, I know this doesn't pertain exactly to all these groups, but at the same time, it does build the case for all of the financial hardships that people are experiencing right now, and building once again that case for additional financial assistance going forward, otherwise known as stimulus checks going forward into 2021. So let's go through some of this information and see what it potentially means going forward through the rest of 2020 and next year. So it's actually been estimated and reported that 22% of Americans have either moved or know somebody that has moved in 2020. Let's compare this to other years. In 2019, only 10% of Americans actually moved. In 2020, this 22% is the greatest percentage of Americans moving since 1947, when all of this data was started to gather, when they started collecting all of this data. So over 70 years, this is the greatest number of, the greatest percentage of Americans moving around the country in one single year. So some of these biggest cities that are experiencing this mass exodus. New York, which all of us know is an extremely expensive city to live in. So there's a mass exodus of people out of New York. Another city, San Francisco, another city that all of us know is incredibly expensive. So there's mass exodus out of these two cities. What's actually interesting is the majority of people, not all, but a large percentage of the people leaving New York are actually going to Los Angeles. Many of the people leaving San Francisco are going to Seattle. There's also massive inflows of people into cities like Tampa, Florida, and Denver, Colorado, among many others. So it's very interesting to watch the flows of people out of these very expensive cities. Are they doing it simply just because it's just they wanted to do it and all of a sudden they decided 2020 is a great year to move? No. It's most likely because of financial reasons, right? These are very expensive cities. People need to reconsolidate, reconcile, and kind of go to cities that make more sense to live in financially because maybe income has dropped, maybe employment has ceased, expenses has risen. There's just a lot of different factors. So it's certainly very interesting to look at the flows of people around the country, the moving patterns around the country. Also, it has been estimated that 30 million Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 have actually relocated and have moved back in with their parents. That's a huge number. 30 million Americans between the age 18 and 29 have actually moved back home to their parents, to live with their parents. Now just remember, this is probably a number, this group, this 30 million American group, is probably not just going to flip a switch someday and all of a sudden say, okay, everything's out in the clear, everything's good to go, I'm out of here and I'm going to move back out. This is probably going to take several years for these 30 million Americans to move out of their parents' house once again and go back out on their own and infiltrate these cities and wherever else they came from or wherever else they decide to settle. Also, something else that's interesting to think about too. So this age group, 18 to 29, we can probably anticipate their parents are anywhere between the ages of, let's just say, maybe like 45 to 50 up to maybe like 60 to 65, kind of that age range. Probably let's just call it like 45 to 65-ish range. Well, we can probably anticipate some of those Parents are probably retired or not working anymore. Maybe they're living off of savings. Maybe they're living off of a fixed income like a pension. Maybe they're living off of a set income or a fixed income like Social Security, retirement, disability. Maybe it's SSI, supplemental security income, or VA benefits, something like this, a fixed income. Well, what does that do financially to bring another person into the house? Of course, it's going to raise expenses once again. So again, another financial strain for so many Americans right now. Again, I'm going to have more videos on this going forward into the future. But again, I wanted to bring this one dedicated video to talk about this because it's very interesting to see these patterns, and it's obvious that so many Americans are struggling during this time and seeking ways to mitigate their financial exposure. Like this, the 30 million people I just talked about moving back home with their parents, right? They probably were living maybe in an apartment, maybe in a house, in maybe a large city that's expensive. And of course, maybe it's not New York, maybe it's not San Francisco, but it's probably some other major city. Maybe they lost employment, or maybe their hours were reduced, or maybe expenses have gone up, or whatever the reason. But for financial reasons, they've decided to probably move back with their parents, and probably, possibly safety reasons. Who knows what? They want to feel safe living at home with their parents versus out in a large city where maybe they feel like the virus is spreading a little bit more quickly, or social unrest, or who knows what's going on. But either way, it's an indirect way of watching the flows of Americans and seeing possibly what they're doing financially. It's obvious that so many people are struggling right now. It's certainly going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward into 2021, because here we are in basically late 2020. It's going to be interesting to see how the government approaches all of this going forward into 2021, as literally tens of millions of Americans are struggling. And like I've talked about in other videos, at the end of this year, 2020, there are a lot of different programs that are expiring. One being rental eviction ban, that's expiring the end of the year. I produced a video about that recently. But, programs like that. What's going to happen to so many people going forward into 2021? I'm going to make another video talking about that over the next couple days here, but that's certainly going to be very interesting. Not only interesting, but actually incredibly concerning going forward. So I wanted to bring you this video because I think it's very interesting to watch these patterns and to see that if you're struggling right now, you're definitely not alone. I would say that a massive percentage of Americans in this country right now are probably going through something very similar to what you are. So either way, I'm always here for you. I'm always looking out for you. I hope this video possibly offered some interesting information and possibly some support in some way. But either way, I'll continue bringing you more information as we get it regarding Social Security, Medicare, stimulus checks, everything like that. So enjoy your day, stay safe out there, and I will catch you again in the next video.